Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, especially the marksmen and markswomen, to make the right mark. And the right mark is not just discussing climate change, that is a shift we are seeing from policy to implementation and action. And as we say normally, the taste of the pudding is in eating it. And that's what India has showcased to the world, that while world is struggling, because the world is thinking in silos. They think development and the climate agenda are opposite. Right-wing government, the left-wing government, then there are Greens. In India, it's all one. The government of the day will be the right wing when it comes to capitalist market. It will be left wing when it needs to give out to the people and engage in, I call it social welfareism and working with the people on the grassroots. And it will be green when it comes to the climate agenda. That's where the governance lies. And that analysis becomes important because through this analysis, we know there is no right, there's no left, there's only governance, and governance means working for the people. And especially in democracy, it is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So what is the agenda of the people is the agenda of the government, and whatever is the agenda of the government, the right thinking, the policy makers, has to be finally translated into the governance of and for the people, and that becomes the agenda of the people as well. And we've seen it in various methodologies which have been adopted in past 10 years, and that is where we see that in past 10 years, the methodology of governance has shifted. And because of that, the last decade, the kind of changes, the aspirations and satisfying those aspirations has happened is because there is a cohesion in all the three structures. And in this structure, I must say, since the subject you've given me is policy to action and legislation is one means, we can see that recent changes in NGT, because the government of the day felt certain changes need to be introduced. We saw implementation of Swachh Bharat, and we saw how the habit formations can be altered. We're now seeing mission millets. We also know that how food habits and the food plate can actually impact the climate change, and talk about sustainability is not in isolation, but talk about sustainability is a complete cohesive existence. We talk about mission life, which the Prime Minister introduced as a political habit by leadership, that political habits need to change and those habits need to be translated into the people's habit. And that is what leadership is all about, leading from the front, talking about philosophy, and yet implementing it at the grassroots, where everybody is a partner, everybody is a stakeholder. In this light, I must say that we are one of the few, whether it's COP26 or COP28 or whatever COPs which will happen in future, we have been a constant feature. And in that constant feature, we are one nation which has implemented its national established goals. Whatever we undertook, we implemented. 45% of energy which will be renewable, 50% will be produced, and by 2070, we would have done net zero. And this is a thought out strategy. We can see that by 2030, we are almost there, and we are not quite there. From just 26 gigabyte to what, 200 plus 200, close to 250 is where we have already reached, and target is about 500, which I'm sure we will be able to implement ASAP. And we are in the process of implementing. Latest technologies is what one is working at, and I tell this to the world, that let's not chase the 2D solar, let's move on to 3D solar. And the inventor happens to be an Indian, which is able to scale it up through some governments in Europe. And I wish we fund that, implement that in India, because the need for newer structures, need for more land resource will go away, because everything which is already existing and is built up can be used as a module. And that's where we need to work at, because the cost decreases, efficiency increases by 70%. So if there is a panel which is producing, we all know 22 to 24% is the rate, but that immediately becomes 72 and 74%, hiked by 50% or 55%. That is the change one is looking at. Just capturing of the photon based on design and converting that into energy. I was just now talking to a gentleman, and the company I think is Boots, off-grid everything, because we also understand the loss in transmission. We understand the loss in transmission and the battery workup, which is itself consuming a lot of energy. Can we figure out cheaper forms of energy conservation in terms of battery? Because that's the new place we are looking at, that batteries need to be reworked, reinvented, regrouped, so that all the money which is going into a certain type of battery is stopped, dependence also decreases, and we can do a lot of work which is off-grid through that methodology, or depending on the time sharing, this can be implemented very well. So I must take pride in saying that I know of a gentleman in origin who's done extremely well in producing a new battery, which will be coming to the market very soon. Similarly, about engines, we know EV is the need of the day, but how engines and electromagnets are operating the market or controlling the market. So going back to the old technology, but modifying it enough to maintain the speed and scale, where ferrites are being used again, which is easily workable, but through design, we have made efficient engines as well. So a lot is happening. A lot is getting implemented. A lot is faced with difficulties in implementation. And I always say that the gaps in implementation are not there because intentions are wrong. Intentions may be right. And people, probably there's a gap in understanding. And the gap in awareness, I can say, is leading to certain gaps in implementation. So the agenda of awareness cannot escape our sight. And awareness has to be thinking through. It is not some campaign. Campaigns don't work. Campaigns have their place otherwise, but thinking through the problem is what needs to be done. So the environmental jihad is not the way forward. Environmental policy is the way forward. You need to think through the problem and work at it. You can't have an agenda that this is what it is, while you may actually be only shifting carbon footprint from place A to place C, but not really controlling the carbon footprint. So if the idea is to control the carbon footprint, the agencies, policymakers, and implementers have to come together to think on those lines, that how best can we reduce the carbon footprints? Because shifting carbon footprint does not solve the problem. It only postpones the problem for another day, for another place. I mean, digitalization, all of us, including me, I'm very fond of data, and I will normally ask anyone, whoever starts to have a discussion, I say, show me the worksheet. I don't want the text, just show me the numbers. Just put up a sheet so that I know exactly what's happening, where rest my mind will do the analysis and thinking. But even the data storage, even all the data centers, etc., we all understand the kind of energy that requires. And we also know the direct impact on climate change. Can we do that the green way? Can we reduce the footprints while managing the data centers? That will be thinking through the problem, because we know we need the data, we know how to manage it. We would require, but can we find solution to that problem? And if we don't find solution to that problem, we are adding to the chaos which is already there in the world. And that chaos is not helping any of us. So to reduce the chaos, thinking through the problem, taking the product forward is what we need to do. And I think my time's running out. So I'll make some quick points, and which is like what is the way forward and how best India has dealt with the issue. So one can say the legal framework which is already in existence, the green jurisprudence, we've already seen how it has helped us all, how the environmental changes have brought the shift in thinking. And in that shift, whether it's NGD regulation and other regulations, as I use the word, we don't have to make it an environmental jihad, but it has to be a policy framework. And for that strengthening, we need to work together. And I must say, mainstreaming, of course, when I said about the awareness and the campaigns, the generation, etc., we need to work at. And for strengthening the system also requires access of the system to the people who are suffering because of the climate injustice. So climate justice requires accessibility, and I must say the Indian government at the level of governance, whether it's CDRI or it's ISA or it's Biofuel Alliance, these are the networks through which we can reach out to people, and coalition of disaster resilience infrastructure is something we all need to not just be aware of, but get more and more countries to be part of, and get more and more people to understand, because each one of us is faced with this climate-related infrastructure difficulties, whether it's flooding or it's typhoons or whatever is happening, we are all suffering. So how best we can build on that infrastructure, empowering people and strengthening the system itself, which is again through greater awareness, data sharing, coalition, coordination, cooperation is what needs to be done. And I just feel that mission life becomes everybody's mission, and people start to what we learned as children, recycle, reuse, and rebuild. So rebuild off the grid, rebuild the sewage system, and know the basic principles of physics, that is, energy is constant, and it only changes its forms. So for energy constancy, we all need to understand, and the shape and form that changes has to be put to use by all of us, and all our wearing our thinking hat, and while using the technology and technical skill to manipulate that change of energy and utilize every bit of energy which is just lying wasted here, there, wherever. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.